Hello, and welcome to another episode of Brenda's Musings. So tonight I want to talk about treading a fine line. And by that I mean, how is it that we decide, which side of the problem is going to give us the best results? And which side of the problem might, plunge us into darkness? So, for example, they talk about genius and madness. There's like a fine line that separates the two, right? So at what point is the genius the high point, and what point does that genius turn into madness, for example? And how do you know? Like, how do you test that? So here are some examples. An artist is doing some provocative work, and they have an established audience, and this artist is afraid of turning off part of their audience because the work is just too provocative for them. And they don't really want to do that. It's an established audience that they can sell to. But the more provocative artwork might also attract a different audience, because let's face it, there's an audience for everything in this world. So, and because it's more provocative, it might be more rare, might be harder to find. And so, while you might have fewer buyers, the price might be able to be higher because of its rarity. So in that sense, you've sort of got, it'll come down to what the artist wants to do. Because when you look at the pros and the cons, you may not lose that much. You might actually gain something, right? Then you look at it like a parent. So a parent has to have that fine line between letting their children be adventurous and keeping them safe. And that's something that parents struggle with every day, right? Like we start, especially in today's society, we start by street-proofing our kids so young that we teach them fear or hopefully not fear, hopefully it's just being aware at such an early age. It builds in distrust. It builds in all kinds of other negative stuff, but the kid's safe. Or we let them, climb and wrestle and do like whatever. But what if they fall out of a tree and break their arm? Or worse, break their back? Like, where is that fine line between safety and adventure? And the consequences are a little bit more severe, right? And then you've got, like say the CEO of a company who has to make some hard financial decisions. Do you cut production? Do you cut quality? Do you cut employees? Like, what has to be cut? And, how do you decide? I mean, do you trim a little bit off of everything? Is that going to keep your company being, running efficiently and being able to, recover and move forward? Do you, like, there's so many possibilities, right? And you as the person who's deciding, you have to decide, well, what is the risk? What are the pluses and the minuses? Like if the most negative thing happens, what could be the result? If the most positive thing happens, what could be the result? It's probably not going to be either one of those. It's going to fall somewhere in between. So where realistically is it going to fall? Maybe you can ask somebody who's maybe gone through a similar situation and get some counseling in that sense. Or maybe there's, with the CEO of the company, maybe they could look at something like the market, and do some research that way to sort of get an idea of, where things might bounce back or not. Maybe there are parameters around what the children can do and not do that'll keep them safe, but will still let them explore and be adventurous. And, so you've got to sort of look at the whole picture and then decide, what's worth the risk and what's worth the positive outcome, whatever that might be given the situation. So, when you're treading that fine line, it's like, you almost have a foot on either side of the camp, right? If you go too far this way, this will happen. If you go too far that way, that'll happen. And you're kind of, walking that tightrope, right? And needing to find, like, you have to come to a decision. You can't stay on the tightrope forever. So you got to have plans in place for all these different scenarios. And it's tough. And it's something that we do every day without even realizing it. So just give that some thought. Where in your life are you treading a fine line? And do you just make decisions based on your gut? Do you weigh them? What do you do when you tread a fine line? I'd love to know. Take care, everyone.